in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the Gordon family's kitchen window, illuminating dust motes that danced above the polished granite countertops. Rene Gordon stood at the head of the table, his tall frame commanding attention as he arranged 4 DNA collection kits with the precision of a man who'd spent 20 years in pharmaceutical research. "Everyone, please sit down," he called out, his Scottish accent barely noticeable after decades in America. "This won't take long." Marco, his 10-year-old son, bounded into the kitchen first, Nintendo Switch still in hand. "Is this for the study you mentioned, Dad?" "That's right, buddy." Rene ruffled Marco's straight brown hair, noting absently how different it was from his own sandy blonde waves. "Where's your sister?" "Right here, Dad." Isabella slipped into the room, her dark curls bouncing as she took her seat. At 12, she was already showing signs of the beauty she'd inherit from her mother, though Rene had always found it curious how little she resembled him. Myra entered last, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors. Even after a full day at the law firm, she looked immaculate in her tailored charcoal suit. "I still don't understand why we need to participate in this study, Rene. We're all healthy." Rene uncapped the first swab kit, his movements deliberate. "The compensation package includes lifetime health monitoring for the whole family. Plus, the data helps develop better genetic therapies." He didn't mention that as research director, his family's participation would encourage others in the company to join the study. "And who knows? We might discover something interesting about our ancestry." He caught Myra's slight hesitation, a micro-expression that would have been imperceptible to someone who hadn't spent 15 years reading her face. Her perfectly manicured fingers drummed once on the table before she composed herself. "Fine," she said, reaching for her phone. "But I have a client meeting in an hour." "It's just a cheek swab," Rene assured her, though something about her resistance nagged at him. "Marco, you're up first." Marco opened his mouth obediently, and Rene swabbed the inside of his cheek. The boy's olive complexion seemed to darken in the fading sunlight, a trait Myra had always attributed to her Mexican heritage. "Does it hurt?" Isabella asked, watching her brother. "Nah, just tickles," Marco answered, already back to his game. Rene labeled Marco's sample with practiced efficiency. "Your turn, Isabella." As he collected Isabella's sample, he noticed how her features had matured over the past year. Her nose was becoming more prominent, her jaw more defined, features that didn't quite align with either his Scottish-German background or Myra's claimed Mexican-American ancestry. "Mom's turn," Isabella announced, seeming eager to watch the process. Myra's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. "Can we hurry this along?" "Of course," Rene said smoothly, though he noted her uncharacteristic agitation. "Open wide." As he swabbed her cheek, Myra's phone buzzed again. Her hand twitched toward it, but she resisted checking it. "All done," Rene announced, labeling her sample. He took his own swab last, sealed all 4 kits into the pre-addressed envelope, and added it to his briefcase. "I'll drop these at the lab tomorrow morning." "Great," Myra stood quickly. "I need to get ready for my meeting." "With Vince?" Rene asked casually, referring to her boss, Vincent Romano, the managing partner at her law firm. "Yes, actually, he's bringing in a new client." She kissed the children's foreheads. "Don't wait up, it might run late." After she left, Isabella helped Rene clean up the testing supplies. "Dad, will this tell us if we're really part Scottish like you?" "And German," he reminded her. "But yes, it'll show us all our ancestral backgrounds." He smiled at his daughter, pushing away the familiar niggle of doubt about her distinctly Mediterranean features. Later that evening, as Rene sat in his home office reviewing research proposals, he heard Myra return. The faint scent of expensive cologne drifted under his door, definitely not the same brand he wore. 3 weeks passed in the usual routine of school runs, client meetings, and research reviews. Rene's team processed hundreds of genetic samples, including his family's, building a database that would revolutionize personalized medicine. Friday evening found him alone in his office, reviewing the latest batch of results. His eyes scanned the familiar markers until he reached his family's samples. He frowned, ran the analysis again, then sat back in his chair, blood rushing in his ears. The children's genetic markers showed strong Italian heritage, not a trace of his Scottish-German background. His mind raced through years of memories, reconstructing them with this new lens. Vince Romano's special attention to Myra's career, personally mentoring her from paralegal to junior partner. The late-night strategy sessions. The firm's family picnics where Romano would play with Isabella and Marco, teaching them tennis, lavishing them with attention. Renee pulled up the firm's website, studying Romano's photograph. The prominent nose that Isabella was developing, the olive skin tone that Marco had inherited, the dark curls that both children possessed. His computer pinged with an incoming email. It was from his mother, sending pictures from last Christmas. One photo showed the whole family around the tree, and her comment below read, "The children look more like their mother's side every year, don't they?" Renee stared at the photo, at the knowing smile on his mother's face. Had she suspected? Had everyone suspected except him? His phone buzzed, a text from Myra, "Working late tonight. Big case with Vince. Don't wait up." Renee set the phone down carefully, his movements controlled despite the trembling in his hands. He opened his desk drawer and removed a small voice recorder, standard equipment for documenting research observations. With methodical precision, he began speaking. Initial findings suggest significant genetic anomalies requiring further investigation. Subject M shows consistent pattern of late-night meetings with potential genetic donor VR. Historical behavior patterns indicate long-term deception involving multiple parties. Beginning comprehensive documentation of all variables. He turned off the recorder and opened a new spreadsheet. If there was one thing his years in research had taught him, it was the importance of thorough documentation before acting on any discovery. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight as Renee continued logging dates, events, and observations. Each entry built upon the last, creating a pattern that he had been too trusting to see. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but his mind remained sharp, focused on the task at hand. In the morning, he would begin his real work. But for now, he simply documented, letting the truth of his children's parentage settle into his bones like a slow-acting poison, waiting for the right moment to strike. The weekend passed in a blur of normal family activities. Renee watched Myra at breakfast, noting how she angled her phone away while texting. He observed Isabella practicing tennis serves in the backyard, using the expensive racket that had been a birthday gift from Uncle Vince. He studied Marco's homework, recognizing the tutoring style that matched Romano's prestigious alma mater rather than Myra's claimed methods. Monday morning, he stood in his private lab, staring at the genetic results again. One of his youngest researchers, Dr. Sarachun, knocked on the door. "Dr. Gordon, do you have a moment?" "Come in, Sarah." Renee minimized the screen smoothly. "How's the control group analysis coming along?" Sarah clutched her tablet, looking nervous. "That's actually what I wanted to discuss. I found some unusual patterns in Family Group 7's results. The parental markers don't align with Dash. Delete them." Renee interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "Sir? Family Group 7's results. Delete them from the database. They're contaminated." Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "But the quality controls all past Dash." "Sarah." Renee turned to face her fully, his 6'2" frame imposing even in his lab coat. "Those results are contaminated. Document it as sample degradation and remove them." "That's an order." She swallowed, nodding. "Yes, sir. Will you want to recollect the samples?"
No.
His smile didn't reach his eyes. "That won't be necessary. The family will be withdrawn from the study." After Sarah left, Renee pulled up his calendar. Myra had marked this Friday as another late night at the firm. He opened his browser and began researching private investigators, looking for someone with experience in corporate surveillance. The betrayal crystallized in his mind, hardening his resolve. He'd built his career on precision, patience, and attention to detail. Now he would apply those same skills to dismantling the elaborate deception that had become his life. His office phone rang, Myra's number flashing on the display. He let it go to voicemail, then played the message. "Hi, honey. Just reminding you about Isabella's tennis tournament this weekend. Vince mentioned he might stop by to watch since he sponsored her training. Love you." Renee deleted the message, then opened a new document. At the top, he typed, Project verification. Phase 1. Below it, he began listing names, every friend, colleague, and family member who might have known the truth. The sun set outside his office window as he worked, casting long shadows across his desk. In the growing darkness, Renee Gordon began plotting the systematic destruction of everything Vince Romano held dear, starting with his carefully constructed second family. The genetic test that was supposed to ensure his family's health would ultimately ensure justice. Renee just needed to wait for the right moment to unleash its findings. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Myra. Running late? Don't wait up. Kiss the kids goodnight for me. Renee typed back a simple okay, then returned to his planning. In the pharmaceutical world, the most effective treatments often required perfect timing. This would be no different. He pulled up the law firm's website again, studying Vincent Romano's smiling profile picture. The man's dark Italian features seemed to mock him now, echoed in the faces of the children he'd raised as his own. Enjoy your empire while it lasts, Vince, Renee muttered, saving his files to a secure drive. The truth is already in motion. That evening, as he helped Isabella with her science homework, she looked up at him with Romano's eyes. Dad, did you know Uncle Vince studied biology in college too? He was telling me about it at tennis practice. Did he now? Renee kept his voice neutral, though his pen pressed harder into the paper. And what else does Uncle Vince tell you during these practices? Oh, lots of things. He says I have a natural talent for tennis, just like him. And he's been helping me look at good schools for when I'm older. He says with his connections, Dad. That's enough homework for tonight. Renee interrupted gently. Why don't you get ready for bed? As Isabella packed up her books, Renee added another note to his mental file. Romano wasn't just playing father. He was planning their futures. In bed that night, he heard Myra come home well after midnight. The scent of Romano's cologne drifted up the stairs, mixed with the subtle notes of expensive wine. She slipped into bed without showering, probably thinking him asleep. Renee lay still, his breathing steady, as his wife of 15 years settled in beside him. In the darkness, he began calculating how long it would take to document everything, to build an irrefutable case. The scientist in him knew that rushing would only risk errors. The father in him wanted scorched earth immediately. But the strategist, the part of him that had risen to research director through careful planning and precise execution, knew that revenge, like good research, required methodology. He would give them enough rope to hang themselves. Then he would pull it tight. The next morning, over breakfast, Myra chatted about her late-night meeting. The new client is really demanding. Vince thinks we might need to pull more all-nighters to meet the deadlines. Whatever it takes, Renee replied, buttering his toast. The firm's lucky to have you both. Myra beamed, missing the ice in his eyes. I knew you'd understand. You're always so supportive. Family comes first, he said, watching her face carefully. Isn't that right? For a fraction of a second, something flickered across her features. Guilt, perhaps, or fear. But it vanished so quickly he might have imagined it. Marco bounded into the kitchen, Romano's athletic grace evident in his movements. Mom, don't forget Uncle Vince is taking me to the soccer game on Saturday. Of course, honey. Dad has to work this weekend anyway. Right, Renee? Renee nodded, memorizing every detail of the exchange. Right. You three have fun. He drove to work in silence, his mind categorizing years of similar moments. The uncle who had been more present than any blood relative. The mentor who had shaped his children's interests and activities. The man who had stolen not just his wife, but the very essence of fatherhood itself. In his office, Renee opened his secure drive and began a new entry. Day 1 of official documentation. Subjects continue established patterns. M maintains deception through practice narratives. Children show strong behavioral and physical traits linking to VR's social circle appears complicit in ongoing deception. He paused, then added, preliminary hypothesis. Exposure of truth will require systematic dismantling of established support networks. Begin identification of all compromised relationships. The genetic test results glowed on his secondary monitor, a digital smoking gun waiting to be deployed. But first, he needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal. Setting down his coffee, Renee picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd researched the night before. Thelma Sullivan Investigations, a crisp voice answered. Ms. Sullivan, I'd like to discuss your corporate surveillance services. It's regarding a sensitive matter at a law firm. I understand. Mr. Gordon. Renee Gordon. He glanced at the family photo on his desk, a lie captured in silver frame. And I need absolute discretion. That's the only way I work, Mr. Gordon. Shall we meet to discuss the details?
Yes.
Renee's fingers traced the edge of his children's genetic results. I believe we have quite a lot to discuss. Renee Gordon sat across from Thelma Sullivan in a quiet cafe 3 towns over from his home. The private investigator's sharp eyes missed nothing as she reviewed his initial notes. Genetic testing, huh? She tapped her weathered fingers on the manila folder. That's a new one. I need everything, Renee said, his voice low and controlled. Bank records, phone logs, email trails. 15 years of lies don't stay hidden without help. Thelma nodded, jotting notes in her cramped handwriting. You'd be surprised how sloppy people get when they think they're untouchable. Especially lawyers. She glanced up. Your retainer cleared. I'll start today. Over the next week, Renee maintained his routine with military precision. He left for work at exactly 7:15 a.m., kissed Myra goodbye with practiced affection, and buried himself in research projects that now served as perfect cover for his real work. His phone buzzed one morning, a text from Thelma. First findings ready. Hotel Castellano, noon. The boutique hotel's coffee shop offered perfect privacy in its crowd of business lunchers. Thelma spread documents across their corner table. Your wife's been busy, she said, sliding over a stack of credit card statements. Shell company called Mr. Consulting pays for a phone she keeps in her office desk. Roman's initials. Not very creative. Renee examined the statements. Monthly payments for 13 years. That's not all. Thelma produced hotel receipts. The Waldorf, the Peninsula, the Four Seasons. Always booked through the firm's corporate account as client meetings or depositions. Your friend Felipe signed off on most of them. Felipe. Renee's hand stilled. His best friend since college. The man who'd stood as his best man. Show me. The receipts told a damning story. Felipe had consistently reserved conference rooms that were never used, creating alibis for Myra and Romano's working dinners. Your friend's signature is on hundreds of these, Thelma noted. He knew exactly what he was covering up. Renee's jaw tightened. What else? Your couple's therapist, Dr. Andrea Birch. Thelma pulled out more papers. She's been counseling your wife and Romano separately for years. I found these email threads through a data recovery service. The emails revealed intimate details of sessions where Dr. Birch had helped Myra and Romano navigate their complex love while maintaining existing family structures. She'd actively advised them on managing their affair while keeping Renee in the dark. The therapist you trusted to help your marriage was coaching them on how to deceive you better, Thelma said bluntly. Want to see the billing records? Everything, Renee replied, his voice arctic. I want everything. Over the next 2 weeks, Thelma's investigation uncovered layers of betrayal that stunned even her experienced sensibilities. She met Renee in different locations each time, bringing new evidence of the elaborate deception. Your sister-in-law's beach house, she reported one day, showing photographs. Those sister weekends Myra takes? Romano's car is always there, arriving Friday night, leaving Sunday morning. Another meeting brought financial records. Romano's wife died 5 years ago. Look at these social media posts from your friends. She displayed screenshots of mutual acquaintances celebrating Romano, finding happiness again. Thinly veiled references to his relationship with Myra. They all knew, Renee said, his voice deadly quiet. Every single one of them. It gets worse. Thelma hesitated, uncharacteristically concerned. Romano's brother, Anthony, Isabella's godfather? He's been positioning himself as their backup father figure for years. She produced documentation of tennis lessons, recital sponsorships, and private school recommendations. The children's admission to St. Margaret's prep? That wasn't Myra's interview prep that got them in. It was Romano's influence as a board member. Renee absorbed each revelation with growing coldness. His researcher's mind cataloged every betrayal, every conspirator, every lie. The web of deceit stretched far beyond just Myra and Romano. One afternoon, Thelma arrived at their meeting spot with an unusual expression. Found something you need to see. She pulled out property records. They've planned their whole future together. Adjacent burial plots at Holy Cross Cemetery. Purchased 3 years ago. Renee stared at the documents. Even in death, they'd planned to mock his ignorance. There's more, Thelma continued. Trust funds for both children. Listed as Godfather gifts, but the paperwork tells a different story. Romano's been playing daddy with his checkbook too. That evening, Renee sat in his home office, reviewing Thelma's latest findings. A knock at the door made him quickly minimize the screens. Dad. Isabella stood in the doorway, holding a tennis trophy. Uncle Vince says I might be ready for regional competitions soon. He knows some really good coaches. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Renee managed a warm smile, even as his mind recorded another piece of evidence. We'll discuss it this weekend. After she left, he opened his secure drive and added notes about Romano's ongoing manipulation of his children's activities. The man hadn't just stolen his wife. He'd been systematically replacing Renee as a father figure while keeping him blind to the truth. The next day brought a new revelation. Thelma had uncovered email threads between their social circle discussing Myra and Romano's relationship. His screen filled with familiar names. From Felipe Martinez to Maria Martinez, Anthony Romano, Lisa Chun. Subject, Christmas party planning. V can't sit next to him at dinner again. R's mother was asking questions last time. We need to be more careful. Maybe separate tables this year? From Lisa Chun to Felipe Martinez. Agreed. Did you see how he doted on the kids, though? Someone needs to talk to him about being less obvious. Poor Renee has no idea, but others are starting to notice. The casual way they discussed deceiving him made Renee's blood run cold. These were people who smiled to his face, ate at his table, all while helping orchestrate this elaborate fraud. He was reviewing these emails when his phone buzzed. Myra calling. He let it go to voicemail, then played the message. Hi, honey, just checking if you'll be home for dinner. Vince invited us to that new Italian place to celebrate Isabella's tournament win, but I told him you probably have to work late again. Call me back. The casual presumption in her voice, the easy way she included Romano in family celebrations, it all took on new meaning now. Renee added the voicemail to his growing evidence file. A week later, Thelma brought the final pieces of the puzzle. Found these in a sealed court record, she said, sliding over more documents. Romano's been paying for a private apartment through another shell company. Lease dates back 12 years. The apartment's location explained all those late-night depositions perfectly, walking distance from both the law firm and several high-end hotels they'd frequented. Your wife has a key, Thelma added. Regular visits, usually Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Sometimes weekends when you're traveling for work. Renee's methodical documentation continued. Each piece of evidence was carefully cataloged, each conspirator's role noted. The genetic test results that had started this investigation now seemed almost quaint compared to the mountain of evidence Thelma had uncovered. One particular discovery stood out. Thelma had found emails between Myra and Romano discussing their future plans. From Myra Gordon to Vincent Romano. Subject, future plans. Someday we won't have to hide. The kids are starting to ask questions about why you're so involved in their lives. Isabella especially. She's so much like you, always analyzing everything. When the time is right, Romano's response revealed their arrogance. Patience, amore. We've managed this long. Renee's too absorbed in his research to notice anything. The kids already think of me as their father in all but name. Time is on our side. The casual dismissal of his intelligence, the smug certainty of their eventual victory, it crystallized something in Renee. This wasn't just about exposing their affair. This was about dismantling their entire carefully constructed alternate reality. He met with Thelma one final time to review everything they'd uncovered. The evidence filled multiple folders. Hotel receipts spanning 13 years. Email threads between conspiring friends. Financial records of hidden accounts. property records for the secret apartment, trust fund documentation, private school admission interference, therapist session notes, social media conspiracies. And at the center of it all, the genetic test results that had started everything. What now? Thelma asked, watching him absorb the full scope of the betrayal. Now, Renee said, his voice cold with purpose, I begin dismantling everything they've built. Starting with their professional reputations, he wrote her final check, adding a substantial bonus. Thank you for your thoroughness. Word of advice? Thelma gathered her notes. Men like Romano, they're used to winning. When cornered, they get desperate. Watch your back. Renee smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm counting on it. That evening, at home, Renee watched Myra help Isabella with her homework. His wife was explaining legal terms, grooming their daughter for a career in law, no doubt. Another piece of Romano's grand plan for his secret family. Mom, can Uncle Vince help me with my mock trial presentation? Isabella asked. He said he would. Of course, sweetie. He's always happy to help. Myra smiled, typing on her phone, probably messaging Romano that very moment. Renee observed silently, adding mental notes to his investigation. The casual way they'd inserted Romano into every aspect of his children's lives. The confident assumption that their deception would continue indefinitely. Later, in his office, he reviewed the complete file Thelma had compiled. Every person who had helped maintain this deception would face consequences. The therapist who had violated professional ethics, the friends who had covered their tracks, the family members who had provided alibis. His phone buzzed with a text from Felipe. Poker night Friday? The usual crew? Renee thought about the hotel receipts bearing his best friend's signature, the emails coordinating their deception. Can't make it, he replied. Work deadline. He returned to his evidence files, particularly the documentation of how Romano had leveraged firm resources to facilitate the affair. Misused client accounts. Fraudulent billing hours. Ethical violations that would interest the State Bar Association. A new email arrived from Myra. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. Renee checked the secret apartment security camera feed Thelma had discovered. Sure enough, Romano's car was already parked in its usual spot. He opened his research notes, adding another entry. Day 47 of documentation. Subjects continue established patterns, unaware of complete surveillance. Professional misconduct evidence suggests multiple ethics violations. Proceeding to final phase of investigation. The genetic test results still glowed on his secondary monitor, the key that had unlocked this twisted puzzle. Soon it would help him destroy the elaborate lie they'd built around his life. But first, he needed to ensure maximum impact. Romano's arrogance, Myra's confidence in their deception, these would work against them. They'd never expect the devastating precision of his response. Renee began composing a new email to his company's legal department, requesting a meeting about potential ethical violations in local law firms. The pieces were almost in place. In the kitchen, he could hear Isabella chatting on the phone, probably with Romano, discussing her upcoming tennis tournament. His daughter's voice carried the same analytical tone as her biological father's, a fact that would soon take on very different meaning. Renee saved his files and encrypted the drive. Tomorrow he would begin the endgame. But tonight, he would finish documenting every detail of their betrayal, preparing for the moment when their carefully constructed world would shatter. They had spent 13 years crafting this elaborate performance. He would spend the next few weeks systematically dismantling it, until nothing remained of their secret life but ruins. The genetic study that had revealed their deception would prove to be their undoing. Renee allowed himself a small smile as he reviewed the final pieces of evidence. They had no idea what was coming, and by the time they figured it out, it would be far too late. Renee Gordon stood in his private lab, reviewing the final genetic analysis report from Dr. Sarachan. Her findings matched his original discovery perfectly, statistical proof that would stand up to any scrutiny. Your request for expedited verification is complete, Dr. Gordon, Sarah said, handing him the bound report. The heritage markers are conclusive. Should I update the main study database? No need. Renee placed the report in his briefcase. Your discretion is appreciated, Sarah. I'd like you to attend a meeting next week. Bring your expertise and your documentation skills. His next call was to Nell Stewart, the city's most feared family court attorney. Her reputation for destroying opposing counsel had earned her the nickname the Guillotine. Genetic proof of paternity fraud? Nell's voice carried a predatory edge. Combined with corporate misconduct? Mr. Gordon, you've just made my month. When can you meet? They convened in her downtown office that afternoon. Renee laid out Thelma Sullivan's evidence alongside the genetic reports. 13 years of systematic deception, he explained. I want their entire world dismantled. Professionally, financially, socially. Nell reviewed the files, her smile growing sharper. Oh, this is beautiful. The corporate misuse of funds alone, and Dr. Birch's ethical violations? We'll have her license. She looked up. How much scorched earth are you aiming for? All of it. Good. She pulled out a legal pad. First, we secure your assets. Then we document every instance of parental alienation. Romano's brother's involvement as godfather is particularly egregious. But before we file anything, her eyes gleamed. Tell me about this board meeting you've arranged. Renee outlined his plan. Nell's approval showed in her widening grin. A corporate presentation on healthcare benefits? Classic misdirection. Their arrogance will be their undoing. She began drafting documents. I'll have everything ready. Just give me the signal after the board meeting. The next week passed in meticulous preparation. Renee transferred assets, documented every piece of evidence, and coordinated with Sarah Chun for the presentation. He maintained his normal routine at home, watching Myra's continued deception with clinical detachment. The morning of the board meeting, Renee dressed with particular care. His charcoal suit and blood-red tie sent a subtle message. This was war. Romano's law firm occupied the top floors of a downtown high-rise. The managing board gathered in their sleek conference room, Romano at the head of the table in his usual power position. Renee. Romano's greeting dripped with false warmth. So good of you to share your company's healthcare innovations with us. Myra tells me your genetic study is groundbreaking. Oh, it's revealing things we never expected, Renee replied smoothly. Myra will be joining us later? Yes, for the second half. She's finishing up some depositions. Romano's smile didn't reach his eyes. Shall we begin? Renee connected his laptop to the projector. Dr. Chun sat quietly in the corner, recording device ready. Before we discuss healthcare plans, Renee began, I'd like to share some fascinating genetic data we've uncovered, particularly regarding hereditary traits in Italian bloodlines. Romano's smile flickered slightly. Renee clicked to the first slide, a genetic marker analysis. You see, Italian heritage has very distinct markers. When combined with, say, Mexican-American genetics, the patterns are quite unique. Another click. Unless, of course, there is no Mexican-American ancestry at all. The color began draining from Romano's face as Renee methodically presented the evidence. Genetic proof, hotel receipts, bank records, email threads. Each piece stripped away another layer of their carefully constructed lies. This misuse of company resources, Renee continued, highlighting fraudulent billing records, raises serious ethical concerns, as does the involvement of certain board members in facilitating long-term deception. This is outrageous. Romano stood, his composure cracking. You can't dash. Sit down, Vince. Renee's voice could have frozen flame. I'm not finished. The conference room door opened. Myra walked in, stopping short at the sight of the genetic results projected on the screen. Perfect timing, Renee said. We were just discussing your 13-year performance as my wife. The board members shifted uncomfortably as more evidence appeared. Professional misconduct, ethical violations, years of systematic deception involving firm resources. The State Bar Association will be particularly interested in Dr. Birch's emails, Renee noted, as will the medical board. And your malpractice insurers might have questions about those creative billing practices. You're bluffing, Romano snarled, but his face had gone ashen. Renee turned to the board. Your firm's reputation is about to become radioactive. Unless what? Demanded the senior partner, glaring at Romano. Mr. Romano takes early retirement. Immediately. With no severance or benefits, Renee smiled coldly. A quiet departure before this evidence becomes very, very public. The board's deliberation was swift and merciless. Romano's protests died as his partners chose the firm's survival over his career. Myra stood frozen, watching her carefully planned future implode. Renee, please dash. Miss Gordon, Nell Stewart interrupted, entering with a thick folder. These are for you. Divorce papers. I suggest you read the terms carefully. Your alternative is a very public trial involving paternity fraud and criminal conspiracy. The aftermath unfolded with devastating precision. Romano was forced into early retirement, his reputation in ruins. The State Bar's ethics investigation uncovered years of professional misconduct, leading to his disbarment. Dr. Birch faced her own reckoning. Her license was revoked for ethical violations, her practice destroyed by the scandal. The friends who had facilitated the affair found themselves professionally ostracized, their complicity exposed through Renee's evidence. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly. Myra's attempts to claim parental rights backfired spectacularly when the evidence of long-term deception was presented. Her sister's involvement in hosting their affair cost her her own marriage. The social circle that had protected their secret fractured under the weight of consequences. But the most devastating blow came from the children. Once the truth was revealed, Isabella and Marco chose to live with Renee. Their anger at years of manipulation overwhelmed any loyalty to their biological father. You used us? Isabella told Romano during a supervised visitation. Every tennis lesson, every school event. It was all just part of your plan. Marco refused to even speak to him. The boy who had once idolized his Uncle Vince now understood the true cost of his games. Myra and Romano married quickly after the divorce, clinging to their claims of true love, but their dream life crumbled under financial strain and social exile. Romano's retirement meant no more luxury lifestyle. Myra's legal career was tainted by the scandal. They moved to a modest condo, far from their former social circle. Their love proved less resilient than expected when faced with middle-class reality and public shame. 1 year later, Renee sat in his new home office, reviewing a different kind of document. The genetic study had been published in a prestigious journal, anonymized but clear. Sometimes the truth lies in our blood, waiting to be discovered. Isabella knocked on his door, holding college brochures. Dad, I've been thinking about majoring in genetics. Renee smiled, a real smile, not the cold expression he'd worn through the divorce. I think you'd be excellent at it. On his desk sat 2 sealed letters from Myra, begging to explain the real story. He'd never opened them. Some stories didn't deserve to be heard. The afternoon sun streamed through his window as he watched Isabella and Marco playing tennis on the backyard court. They'd reclaimed the sport for themselves, stripping away Romano's influence. His phone buzzed. A text from Nell Stewart. Final ethics judgment came in. Romano's disbarment is permanent. Thought you'd want to know. Renee set the phone aside and returned to helping Isabella with her college applications. The genetic test that was supposed to ensure his family's health had ultimately ensured their freedom from a web of lies. The truth had set them free, even if the path there had been paved with destruction. He regretted nothing. In the end, their elaborate performance had been undone by simple science. Blood never lies, even when everyone else does. And Renee Gordon had made sure every conspirator paid the full price for their deception. Epilogue. 5 years later. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the Stanford University campus as Renee Gordon watched Isabella present her genetics research project. At 17, she'd gained early admission to Stanford's prestigious genetic engineering program, her father's methodical nature evident in her precise analysis of hereditary markers. DNA doesn't just tell us who we are, Isabella concluded, her confidence reminiscent of the father who'd raised her, not the one who'd tried to buy her affection. It reveals the truth we sometimes try to hide. Her professor's enthusiastic applause was joined by Marco's from the front row. Now 15, he'd grown into a thoughtful young man who'd channeled his anger into academic excellence, deliberately choosing paths different from both his biological and legal fathers. His interests lay in computer science, not law or pharmaceuticals. After the presentation, the 3 of them walked across campus, Isabella's acceptance letter tucked safely in her bag. "Dad," Marco asked, "did you hear about Romano?" Renee had heard. Everyone in their professional circles had. The former legal titan now worked as a consultant for a small-town law firm in Nevada, his expertise wasted on minor property disputes and traffic violations. The State Bar Association had made his disbarment permanent, citing unprecedented ethical violations and persistent patterns of deception. "I saw him at the grocery store last month," Isabella added, her voice neutral. "He tried to talk to me about tennis scholarships." As if nothing had changed. "What did you do?" Renee asked, though he already knew. He'd raised them to be strong. "I told him my achievements were my own, not his investments." She squared her shoulders. "Then I left him standing there with his generic brand coffee and discount suits." The mighty Vincent Romano had fallen far. His early retirement had come without pension or benefits, his reputation destroying any chance of consulting work with major firms. The man who'd once commanded a corner office now worked from a rented desk, his designer suits replaced by department store clearance items. Their mother hadn't fared much better. Myra's legal career had imploded along with her affair. No prestigious firm would touch her after the scandal. She tried to rebuild her practice in Nevada, but her involvement in the ethics violations had followed her. Now she worked as a paralegal, a step below where she'd started 15 years ago. Felipe called last week, Marco mentioned as they stopped for coffee. He wanted to apologize again. Renee's former best friend had paid dearly for his role in the deception. The scandal had cost him several major clients, and his wife had left him after discovering his complicity. He'd moved to Seattle, trying to rebuild his life far from the wreckage of his choices. And Renee stirred his coffee, remembering the hotel receipts bearing Felipe's signature. "I told him the same thing I told Romano. Some betrayals don't get second chances." They passed a newsstand where the local Bar Association journal was displayed. The cover story detailed new ethics guidelines implemented after the Romano scandal, as it had become known in legal circles. The case was now taught in law schools as an example of how thoroughly a career could be destroyed by ethical violations. Renee's own career had soared. His genetic study, published anonymously but widely recognized in the field, had revolutionized hereditary research protocols. He'd been promoted to global research director, his methodology in uncovering the truth earning him respect in scientific circles. Dr. Birch lost her appeal, Isabella commented, checking her phone. "They're not reinstating her license." The therapist who had counseled Myra and Romano's affair had faced her own reckoning. After losing her license, she tried to reinvent herself as a life coach, but the scandal followed her online. Her practice had collapsed, her professional reputation unsalvageable. They drove home to find an invitation in the mail, the annual Pharmaceutical Research Awards dinner. Renee had been nominated for his work in genetic mapping. Inside was a note about seating arrangements, specifically mentioning that the Romano Gordon party had requested to be seated far from his table. "They're still together?" Marco asked, surprising Renee. It was the first time in months his son had shown any interest in his biological parents' lives. Technically, Renee had heard through professional circles. "Though I understand their true love isn't quite what it used to be." The truth was, Myra and Romano's dream life had crumbled spectacularly. Their hasty marriage, meant to prove their love was real, had devolved into bitter arguments over money and lost status. The man who'd once hosted lavish parties now clipped coupons. The woman who'd orchestrated 13 years of deception now answered phones at a strip mall law office. They lived in a small rental condo on the outskirts of Reno, their joint income barely covering their modest lifestyle. Romano's trust funds for the children, his attempt to buy their affection, had been redistributed to their college accounts, managed solely by Renee. Their godfather gifts had become just another failed manipulation. Isabella's mother called, Marco said later that evening, using the formal title both children had adopted. She wanted to know if we're visiting for Christmas. They weren't. The children's decision to stay with Renee had been absolute. Supervised visitations had dwindled to occasional phone calls, then to nothing. Isabella and Marco had chosen truth over biology, just as they'd chosen their own paths over Romano's carefully planned futures. The social circle that had protected the affair had fractured irreparably. Myra's sister's marriage had ended over her role in hosting the lovers. The couple's friends who had facilitated their deception found themselves professionally isolated, their complicity exposed through Renee's meticulous evidence. Some had tried to reconcile, claiming they'd only wanted everyone to be happy, but happiness built on lies had proved as fragile as Romano's ethics. Dr. Sarachun, who had helped verify the genetic findings, now ran her own research department. She'd earned respect for her integrity during the scandal, her detailed documentation helping ensure the truth couldn't be buried. Thelma Sullivan, the private investigator who'd uncovered the web of deception, had retired comfortably, her role in exposing the scandal bringing her high-profile clients. She still sent Renee Christmas cards, usually with news clippings about Romano's latest failed attempts to restore his law license. Nell Stewart's reputation had grown even more fearsome. The Romano case had become her signature victory, cited by other attorneys as the gold standard for handling paternity fraud cases. She'd even published a legal paper on it, analyzing how thoroughly a trusted professional could destroy themselves through ethical violations. The children's former school had undergone its own changes. After Romano's influence in their admission was exposed, the board had implemented stricter policies about membership and admissions. His brother had been forced to resign as a trustee, his attempts to play backup father backfiring completely. That evening, Renee sat in his study, reviewing Isabella's college applications. Her personal essay discussed how discovering her genetic heritage had shaped her academic interests. She turned trauma into triumph, just as he'd taught her. Marco worked on his coding project nearby, designing software to detect patterns of deception in financial records. His own way of ensuring truth prevailed. A letter arrived from Nevada, another plea from Myra to explain everything. Like the others, it would remain unopened. Some explanations came too late. One of Renee's research assistants had spotted Romano at a local budget airline counter recently, flying standby to a minor legal conference. The man who'd once commanded private jets now waited for middle seats in coach, his Italian leather briefcase replaced by a scuffed laptop bag from Target. Myra worked overtime at the strip mall law office, her designer wardrobe sold on consignment sites. Their genuine love had withered under financial strain and lost status. They discovered that passion was poor compensation for destroyed careers and social exile. Their joint therapy sessions, now with a counselor they could barely afford, focused on accepting their new reality. The irony of them needing therapy to cope with consequences of their therapist-enabled affair was not lost on anyone. The genetic study continued to influence the field. Research protocols now included stricter ethical guidelines about handling unexpected findings. Renee had turned personal betrayal into professional innovation, his methodology cited in scientific journals. Isabella's acceptance letter sat on his desk beside a tennis trophy, this one earned without Romano's influence. She'd reclaimed the sport on her own terms, stripping away its connection to the man who tried to buy her love. Marco's coding competition medal hung nearby. He'd chosen computer science specifically because neither of his fathers had any connection to it. His path was entirely his own. Renee picked up a recent photo of the three of them at a research conference. Isabella's presentation on genetic markers had earned a standing ovation. Marco's pattern recognition software had impressed several tech companies. They were thriving, not despite the truth, but because of it. His phone buzzed, Nell Stewart sharing news about Romano's latest failed appeal. The state bar remained unimpressed by his claims of rehabilitation. Some reputations couldn't be recovered. Dad, Isabella stood in the doorway. I finished my Stanford housing application. Would you review it? Renee smiled, setting aside thoughts of the past. His daughter's future, built on truth, strength, and resilience, mattered far more than the lies that had revealed it. The genetic test that was supposed to ensure his family's health had ultimately given them something far more valuable: freedom from deception, the strength to face truth, and the courage to build new lives from the wreckage of lies. In the end, science had revealed what years of deception had hidden. DNA testing, meant to map medical futures, had instead mapped the path to justice. And in the aftermath, surrounded by his children's achievements and the quiet satisfaction of consequences properly served, Renee Gordon had no regrets. Truth, it turned out, was the best revenge of all.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.